While exploring a sprawling dwarven city, your players learn that two massive monsters have escaped their confines and are hiding within the town's borders. Can your party track down the reptilian creatures before they wreak havoc on the townsfolk, or will the beasts run amok? Welcome to Quick Quest, where I give you pre-written, ready-to-run adventures to use in your own games. This quest was designed for a party of 6 level 11 players, but can easily be adapted if your party is larger or at a higher level. Without further ado, let's get started. You can set this quest in pretty much any city, but I chose to run it in a town named Tinhagen. Built inside the peak of a mountain, the expansive city is the capital of the Dwarven Kingdom, lit not by the sun, but oil lamps and lava canals. It's here that your party will come across a very strange group of characters who call themselves the Melted Rock Club. Wearing orange robes and hats that look a bit like volcanoes, the club is dedicated to their pseudoscientific, questionably magical studies. Most of their research is on things like moon dust in the water supply that turns people into werewolves, or uncovering deep state conspiracies in the dwarven government. While a lot of it is outright wrong, sometimes they do stumble on an interesting discovery, and in this case, they need your players' help to contain it. The club came across 2 eggs belonging to draconic creatures known as Behir. Long and slender, they sport 12 legs, sharp teeth, and lightning breaths to boot. So naturally, the club thought it best to try and raise the creatures. Only now they've escaped, having somehow gotten out of their cage. Their only lead is that the creature's caretaker, a woman named Dorda, is missing too. Not wanting to involve the local authorities, for obvious reasons, the club will task your players with finding and returning the 2 Behirs, either dead or alive. When I ran this quest, I made the reward information. In exchange for helping out, the club gave the party the location of a downed astral ship that was crucial to one player's backstory. Tying this into one of their own stories is a great way to get the party involved. But, considering the nature of their studies, it's not unreasonable that the club would have a magic item lying around for a reward, or at the very least money. No matter their reward, once your players accept the task of finding both lost lizards, you've got a quest on your hands. Since their only real clue as to what happened is that the Behir's handler is missing too, the club will give your party a few leads they can investigate as to where she could be. Dorda enjoys hanging out at a tavern known as the Underkeep, so the patrons there may be able to tell them more about what she's been up to. But the party will be warned that folks there don't always take kindly to outsiders. Second, they know that Dorda has a home across town, so your players could stop by and do a little snooping, so long as they don't get caught breaking and entering by any town guards. Whether your players decide to follow one or both leads, they'll be able to get the information that they need in order to find the missing Behir. But I'll take you through both sides of the quest until they eventually join back together in the end. Let's start with a trip to a tavern. The Underkeep is in a more residential part of town, away from the main thoroughfares and shopping centers that most visitors to the center would haunt. Outside, it doesn't look like much. It sits between 2 buildings and is only a metal hatch in the ground and a sign above with the tavern name that points down. Opening the gate and climbing a ladder inside, the party will find a small tavern lit by lamplight, with a long stone bar and quiet vibe. Unless your party is made entirely of dwarves, they'll get a lot of dour looks from the bar's regulars as they enter. The dwarves in this place aren't keen to talk to visitors, especially not about their own, so your party will need to find a way to win them over before they're willing to divulge any information. They could do this in a lot of different ways. Buying drinks for the regulars, striking up some friendly conversation with good persuasion checks, offering coin in exchange for information. It might even take a combo of all 3, depending on how well they roll and what they're willing to give up for a good lead. If you have any dwarves in your party, or anybody who speaks dwarvish really, that'll also make things a little bit easier for them. If they can warm themselves up to the locals, eventually they'll learn that Dorda was in here just a few days ago. She seemed a bit out of sorts and was asking the barkeep about their cousin, a butcher named Horrigan who runs a shop in a part of town known as the Sweatstone Terrace, not the city's nicest district. If they want to keep following the trail, they'll need to pay him a visit. The Sweatstone Terrace is where the less fortunate of Tinhagen hang out. Sad pubs with only a few patrons, boarded up stores, beggars on every corner. As outsiders, your party will get more than a few glances from some of the shadier locals who hang out here. And if your players are itching for combat, this could be a good place to throw in some muggers or schemers looking to make some quick coin off your party. But eventually, they'll reach Horrigan's butcher shop. The small store has hooks hanging out front that skewer various cuts of meat, mountain goats, bats, cave lizards. It mostly looks good, though some may be turning a bit green around the edges, and inside, Horrigan is more than happy to try and sell them on any of his products. If they ask about Dorda, he'll let them know he doesn't remember anybody coming by with that name, and inside checks would show that he seems to be being honest. But if they push a little further, he will reveal something strange happened recently. While unloading a cart out back, he noticed that some of the meat seemed to disappear between trips to get it into the shop. Thieves taking a little off the top isn't uncommon, but he was surprised to see several large cuts of meat go missing. If they decide to check out back, the party will need to use survival or investigation to try and figure out what happened. With a high enough roll, DC 16 to be precise, they'll notice small drops of blood that lead away from the back of the store to a nearby alley. At the end of the passage is a heavy grate that leads into the sewers below. It seems whoever took the meat escaped underground. That was only one potential pass, though. Your party may instead decide to head for Dorda's home, which is in a neighborhood that's much nicer than the terrace. While no bandits will accost them, that does mean there are more guards patrolling the streets, so they'll need to be a little sneakier when they get to her abode. Her house is a small one, with potted plants out front and only a few rooms. It's a simple DC 15 check to get into the door or break the latch on a window, but you might want to roll to see if any guards happen by while they're attempting to get inside. If so, you could have the player with the highest passive perception pick up on their approach, so they can react accordingly. Similarly, if they fail their check to get in, I'd have some guards pass by regardless, to make sure there's a small consequence for not getting it on the first try. Once inside, and hopefully not arrested, they'll find that the home consists of a bedroom, kitchen, and small entryway. Here they can make investigation or perception checks to try and pick up on any clues as to Dorda's whereabouts. Depending on how high they roll, they may find a couple of different things. First are books on a shelf that talk about transmutation, illusion, and other forms of magic. Hints that Dorda might be a bit more competent of a spellcaster than the rest of the Melted Rock Club. Second are clothes piled up in a corner that smell rank. Smart players may already begin to suspect that she's been stomping through the sewers below. Most importantly, though, they can find a small note stuffed under her simple mattress. It only has a few words on it, but they're all in Dwarvish, so your party will need to translate to see what it says. The note reads, Otug, which is a Dwarven name, and Court of City Planning. That's their next destination. Leaving Dorda's home behind, the party will need to head toward the Cut of Courts, a wide street lined on either side with offices where the city's government run things. They'll pass courts that deal with banking, law, mining affairs, housing records, until eventually they reach the Court of City Planning. Entering inside and asking about Otug, the dwarf will be pretty reluctant to meet with them. But if they bring up Dorda, they'll be escorted back to his office. Otug is gruff and abrasive, but also very corrupt. He'll let the party know that for a simple bribe, he'll tell them whatever they like about Dorda. After all, she bribed him first. If they're willing to pay, or can come up with some other clever method to get him to talk, Otug will tell them that Dorda had asked for access to the city's sewer plans. Pay him enough, and he'll even point out on the map what section of the plumbing she seemed most interested in. No matter which route they chose, your players are heading down below. Once your party knows they have to head into the sewers, they'll also need to make their way through the labyrinths of tunnels and spoiled water that stretches beneath Tinhagen. If they talk with Otug, you can give them advantage on investigation or survival checks made to get through the sewers. Whereas if they went to the butcher, you could still have them following that trail of blood to find their way. You could also throw some encounters in there for them to find. Flocks of sturges, crazy old men who lived underground, rat swarms chewing on old food scraps. Eventually, the party will reach an area where 4 pipes converge on one central chamber. The water is a bit deeper toward the center, where it pools around an open, rusted pipe that juts up out of the sewage in the middle of the room. If they check out that pipe, they may notice bits of bone contained within, as well as large reptilian footprints and scratches in the rust that forms on the exterior. It seems they found the right place. After a bit of waiting here, they'll begin to hear footsteps approaching from one of the pipes. It's up to them whether or not they want to hide, but if they do, they'll see a dwarven woman with reddish hair and simple brown robes enter the chamber. Dorda. She carries a sack of meat over one shoulder, and if the party doesn't intervene, she'll empty it into that central pipe. At that point, she'll start banging on the rusted metal, and the beast will approach. The Behirs are coming to feed. From this point, there are a few different ways this quest can proceed. The first and most straightforward is combat. If your party attacks Dorda or are caught off guard when she summons the 2 Behirs, which will come bounding down 2 of the tunnels and into the room, it'll be time to roll initiative. For Dorda, you can use the Illusionist Wizard stat block that's in Monsters of the Multiverse, or just scale back the Mage stat block that's in the Monster Manual. If you have less players or they're a lower level, you could also only have 1 Behir instead of 2. Between a powerful bite, lightning breath, constriction that'll restrain your players, and the ability to swallow one of them whole, Behirs can be a very tough challenge for your party. All that said, this quest doesn't have to end in fighting. If your party decides to confront Dorda verbally instead of going on the attack, or they manage to restrain her before she can summon her monsters, they'll have the opportunity to talk it out. She does speak common and will explain that as the Behirs' keeper, she was worried about whatever experiments the Melted Rock Club wanted to do on the creatures. Monsters or not, she believes they deserve better, and so snuck them out by casting Reduce to get them through the door late at night when no one else was around, and down into the sewers below. She wants to release the creatures into the surrounding mountains and has been keeping them here in the sewers until she can find a way to smuggle them out. She's finally managed to negotiate a deal with some shadier merchants to have them secretly shipped out of the city. She just needs to wait another day until they're ready to go. Now your players have a choice to make. If they let Dorda get the creatures out of the city, then the Melted Rock Club will refuse to give them their reward. Not to mention, these creatures are powerful and dangerous, so releasing them could have consequences for travelers heading in and out of Tinhagen. But on the flip side, is it really right to leave these creatures in the hands of weird pseudoscientists who might do all sorts of strange experiments on them? I'll leave that decision up to your party. But if they decide to go against Dorda and turn the giant lizards in, then she will fight back with any means necessary. And without her to control them, so will the Behirs. Whether they take down Dorda and capture the monsters, or let her save her precious pets, that'll mark the end of this quick quest. If the Behirs are returned to the club, dead or alive, then your party can claim their prize and be on their way. If they help Dorda in the end, maybe they could still lie their way to the information or riches they wanted, or take up a different job instead. Maybe there's even a middle ground they can find where everybody ends up happy. Whatever they choose, at least the party can rest easy knowing those beasts won't be stalking the sewers anymore. And the city's butchers can rest easy knowing their product won't keep getting stolen. That's it for this quick quest. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you end up running this at your table or have suggestions for how to make it even better, I'd love to hear them in the comments. If you really enjoyed the video, leaving a like is always appreciated, and you might want to consider subscribing to the Bard's College. I make quick quests like these, as well as all sorts of content about D&D and DMing, so if you liked what you saw, stick around. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.